So this is my first video in a little while. I'll see if I can remember how to do this. This is running various different Beatles landmarks in Liverpool. Don't worry, I've not broken curfew. This video is from a little while ago. And if this reference is now dated because coronavirus is over, then I'm very pleased. So I'll try and bring you up with where I am personally doing these videos in a second. But this is Beatles landmark, so we are going to Forthlin Road, number 20, which is the street ahead of us. And this is the street where Sir Paul McCartney lived. I don't believe he was a sir when he lived here. He lived here from 1955 to 1965. Well, that's when his father lived at the address until. It's often cited as the birthplace of the Beatles, this home. I don't stop at the property. I don't stop at anywhere because I'm out for a jog. So it is coming up where the plaque is, the black plaque straight ahead of us there. That's his old house. It was called the birthplace of the Beatles because it's where John Lennon and Paul McCartney would meet up and they would rehearse lots of the early Beatles songs. I believe I Saw Her Standing There was written there, and Love Me Do and the early songs were rehearsed there. They did prefer to play at John Lennon's house, which is Mendips, where he lived with his Aunt Mimi, because of the front porch, where they had good acoustics, but Aunt Mimi kicked them out, so they had to go to that address. I'm running to John Lennon's house, so if you stay with me, you will see the route that no doubt Paul McCartney and John Lennon walked hundreds of times. But there's Paul McCartney has lots of cool little stories from that address, Forthlin Road that we passed. From around the back of the house, there's a famous drain pipe where you would climb up and down to escape from the teenagers screaming his name, so he didn't have to go out the front door, and he would hop along the gardens on Forthlin Road so he could get a bit of respite. It's owned by the National Trust now, so if you're in Liverpool, you can go and visit John Lennon's house, Mendips, and that Paul McCartney house that I was just at. They're both owned by the National Trust and being decorated to be as they were when the two chaps lived there. So I'll try and bring everyone up, whoever listens to this, with where I am. I've not done a video for a long time, and this video is quite old. This is from my birthday weekend in 2019, so this is over a year old, this video. I've not deliberately stopped doing any of the videos. I've just been working and being busy doing other things. With the current state of everything that's going on, I hope everyone's alright. It sucks for everyone at the minute. Everyone's stuck inside, but if you're stuck inside watching this, you're probably in a safe place, so I hope everyone's alright. But yeah, I've not deliberately stopped doing any of the videos. I just haven't really found the time. Thanks to coronavirus, it's given me a bit of time. And you might be able to tell the acoustics and the recording equipment's changed a bit, just updated things a little bit. I do hope to continue doing more videos. I've still got quite a lot from a trip I did at the end of last year to upload. But I'm not sure what video number this is. I think I passed 70, and this is my first one in England. England is my home. Always has been, I dare say always will be. And Liverpool is somewhere I used to live. We go near where I used to live on this run. I don't live here anymore. And I don't think in any of the videos I've ever expressed my love for the Beatles. Well, maybe I have. I did the John Lennon in New York, I guess. But I'm Beatles crazy. They're my favourite band ever, and the Beatles story's probably my favourite story in history. I just adore the Beatles. Whenever I'm down, I put the Beatles on. They've always been very keen, a keen interest of mine. And the main reason I moved to Liverpool was the Beatles. As strange as that sounds. I do love all these sites and stuff. Where thinking John Lennon and Paul McCartney would like walk up this street and run up the street. I don't know why. I think it's cool. I just do. I guess it's quite an important part in cultural history, the Beatles, and it all started around here. I don't know for sure this is the journey they would take. This is the journey I made up, and I do get rather lost doing it. So they might not have got lost like I do any second. I thought quitting through the golf course was the best idea to get to John Lennon's house. If I remember, I get lost in the golf course. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you know I always get lost running, so I'm used to being lost. If you're still with me at this point in the video, if I remember correctly, I go Paul McCartney's house to John Lennon's house, then I run to Strawberry Fields to Penny Lane. Penny Lane I run past where Freddie Mercury used to live, or it's rumoured that he lived there. He definitely worked at where we run by, but people are a little bit, it's never really been confirmed one way or the other, all the research I do, whether he lived at that property. It's expected that he did, but I'll talk a bit more when I get there. And from there I go to the famous Penny Lane sign, and then I go to where Stu Sutcliffe, and less importantly myself, used to live. Well, I used to live very close to where Stu Sutcliffe would end up living. But this is, I'm not sure the name of the golf course, a famous Beatles photo shoot they did at a golf course. It's not this one. Thought I'd say that. It's the next golf course down. I can't remember the names. If I was better prepared, I'd be able to tell you. If you really want to go to where the golf course where they had a photo shoot, there's 3 quite famous images of the Beatles. But just stressing that it's not this one. I mapped all this out on my phone. Tried to find the best route. I knew where. Like I said, I lived in Liverpool. I knew where Paul McCartney lived. I knew his house. I used to drive along that road where Paul McCartney's house, where I came out. I used to drive up and down that road a lot. I knew where Fourth Lynn Road was. I know where John Lennon lives. I used to live not far from all these places. This is all South Liverpool. I used to live in South Liverpool. But to get from one to the other without using major roads, I wasn't too sure, so I mapped it out, and I thought cutting through this golf course was the best idea. But that wasn't the case, as we'll find out in a sec. Also, I was really, really fit, bizarrely, as you look at my pace as I run. It's quite quick for me, this. There's a cut scene there. I was getting lost. I'm still running now, over a year later, but at this point I was doing 16k runs every week and 10ks, and I always give myself a hard time with my running. This is a bad run. I remember thinking, this is a bad run. I always run a bit slower when I've got a GoPro on my head. It's not an excuse, but I do. And I'm looking back, this is a lot quicker than I run now, if you can believe that. I'm even slower now. And literally, I've just got out the car at Liverpool. I've literally been in the car for 3 hours driving from mine to Liverpool. I came with 2 friends and they stayed in the hotel, and I went straight out for a run. So I've been in a car driving for 3 hours. I get out and I go for this. Ends up being about a 12k run, and I still gave myself a hard time.
Hey, you're right. Hey.
Look at this, running past people, not keeping a clear space. Days before coronavirus, we were all free. At this point, I knew I was in a bit of trouble. I think. Why am I running in a golf course? I thought it would be more separate from a golf course, but as I always do in my videos, I persist. Obviously there's a raindrop on the screen. It does go. If I've checked this footage a long time ago, and I remember the raindrop irritated me slightly, but I think it does go towards the end. If it's bothering you that much, I do apologise. But if you go to Liverpool, you're probably going to see rain, so expect rain. It just adds to the ambience of it all. If I remember on the map that I ran, I think this was meant to be a clearing here, and it wasn't, and there's a fork in the road, which is my pet hate when I'm running and I'm filming videos and I'm running, because I know whichever way I go, it's the wrong way, which it was. I can't remember how I get out of this. I remember I end up on a green, I end up in a bunker. If you live around here in Liverpool, you're probably just thinking I'm an absolute idiot, which isn't far from the truth, but I don't know where I'm going. I can't remember. I'm sorry. I've promised myself lots of times I'll try and stay on top of my videos a bit more, but I always fail. Life gets in the way. So I can't remember what was going through my head. I can't remember what I'm looking for or anything. I'm probably heading towards the block of flats, because that's salvation over there, I guess. So about 5 minutes ago, when I said Paul McCartney and John Lennon would have walked around here quite a bit, they probably wouldn't have got lost in the golf course. Oh dear. I'll jump back in a sec, and when I get back to I'm struggling. I'll jump back. I'll leave you to be lost with me for a couple of minutes. I probably should have edited this out, but meh, it's part of the journey. So I did a bit of self-editing on the day. I swear around this point, because I nearly fall over, so I'm trying to speak over the top. But the green I was on, I ended up in the bunker. I ended up on that green, and I accidentally ran in the bunker, which, if you've ever played golf with me, you know is a position I'm not foreign to. I end up on this guy's drive. I apologise, Mr. Man, if you are watching this. I did not mean to run on your drive. But the road I'm running onto is Menlove Avenue, which is quite a busy road in South Liverpool. This is also the street John Lennon lived on, so it's only like the next major street down or up from each other, John Lennon and Paul McCartney. There's an easy way to get there. If you're in a car, you would have just stayed on the main road and gone around. But I was trying to shorten it up as I was jogging. But I'll jump back in with you when I get to John Lennon's or Aunt Mimi's house. So the house that we'll end up in about 30 seconds time is Mendips, which belonged to John Lennon's Aunt Mimi. I believe John Lennon was 5 when he moved in. I think he moved in 46, 47. 1946, 1947. And he lived there all through the 50s, up until the early 60s when the Beatles took off. I think Aunt Mimi lived there until the mid-60s. If I remember, John Lennon bought her a house in the south of England, which is where she lived until she died. She died in the early 90s, a little while after John Lennon. But this is the house with the black plaque. This also has a blue plaque on the house there, as John Lennon is no longer with us. The porch that was at the front of the house there, that's where John and Paul would have liked to have recorded, practiced their songs, but they weren't allowed, so that's why they used Fourth Lynn Road, which is where Paul McCartney lived. John Lennon's mother, Julia, was killed in an accident, and I believe the accident was on Mendov Avenue as well. I don't think it's knowledge where the accident took place. But that house is where John Lennon, through his uncle, who also died very early in John Lennon's life, gave him his first musical instrument, which was a harmonica. Lots of people will say it was from his mother with the banjo, but his first instrument was from his uncle, and it was in that house. But that is the house where, if I said Cynthia earlier, I meant Julia. Bless me. That's the Magical Mystery Tour bus. If you do a bus tour of Liverpool, which is something I did many years ago. Really good. I really do recommend it. A good way of getting by, seeing all these sites. You also see the cavern and George's house, Ringo's house. You see a lot more things on the bus than we can do by foot. But yeah, the house is where Julia, his mother, would teach him banjo chords, which then led on to him learning guitar. I'm now running to Strawberry Fields, which is not far from John Lennon's house at all. He would play in the gardens. He would truant from school and play in the gardens, which is all to the back of the houses that are on our right here. Strawberry Fields goes around the back. It was an old orphanage when John Lennon lived there, and it was owned by the Salvation Army, and John Lennon would play in the gardens. And many years later, Sgt. Pepper, the album, was originally going to be a concept album about their home, Liverpool. So Paul had written Penny Lane very famously, and John wrote Strawberry Fields very famously, but neither appear on the album. Just the insane pace that the Beatles worked at. They had another concept for another album, and then Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane became a single, which would then go on the Magical Mystery Tour EP, and that's where those songs live, album-wise. They were also on the Blue Album, which was my first Beatles album, which is a compilation. But Beaconsfield Road, this is where Strawberry Fields is. Again, I do not stop. I just run by to show you where it is. There's not a lot to see. Very famous gate, which you've all seen countless times. Quite iconic when you're in Liverpool, certainly if you're into music, to have your picture taken there. There was a big crowd when I was there as well, so everybody's doing their picture. So I didn't want to disrupt too many people with my sweaty self. I believe all this is still owned by the Salvation Army. I believe it's just reopened Strawberry Fields. So if you go into Liverpool post-coronavirus, you'll be able to go in the gardens for the first time since, I think, forever. I don't think you've ever been allowed into Strawberry Fields. I think it's always been closed off. But you're allowed to now. There's like a coffee shop in there. I've not done any of these things, so if I'm wrong, please correct me. I believe there's a coffee shop, and they also grow strawberries in there, and you can buy strawberry jam from Strawberry Fields, which I'm sure is a delightful gift for your mother or father. But I'm running now to Penny Lane as the next stop. Not that entertaining bit to run. It's just along this main road. It's back on Menlove Avenue. And excuse me. So I think I skip it a little bit because it's basically just this all the way. The house, Menlove Avenue, that we passed as well, is infamously used on the front cover of the Oasis Live Forever single. So if you grew up in 90s England, you would have got all the Oasis singles, and you ever wondered what that house was, it was that house on this street. So I'll join you back when I get to Penny Lane. I do think I stopped recording because it is quite a long way from here. Penny Lane is where John and Paul would meet. It was it still is. It's like a central point in South Liverpool. There was a bus route, and John and Paul used to take it, and they would meet up at Penny Lane to get the bus into town. But I'll join you back when I get there. So I just thought I'd drop back. House number of Menlove Avenue for John Lennon is number 251. And if you want to join me back at Penny Lane, it is about 29 minutes and 30 seconds. It's just running along this street, and there's not a lot to it. So I'll see you then. So this is what is known as Penny Lane area. If you just go down Menlove and then you go straight over at the junction, coming from the direction I was going, you will come to this bit. Sorry I skipped that bit, but it's fairly a simple route straight down to Menlove and Penny Lane. But this is all classed as the Penny Lane area. I am watching this without reviewing it, so I hope I get all the places right. You all know the song, well, I'm sure you know bits of it. And I'll try and point out where the little points in the song are. I will fail. I crap of lyrics. So, the shelter in the middle that's the bank on the corner on the right. The shelter in the middle is the white building, which has always been Sergeant Pepper Bistro, a closed Sergeant Pepper Bistro. I've never known it to be open. God knows when it closed. Tony Savile, is it, if I remember? The Black Barbers, that's straight ahead of us. Tony Slavin. That's the Barbers, where the Beatles got their haircuts, which is referenced in the song. It always used to have a picture of the Beatles in there. When I lived in Liverpool, the road we were just on, before I turned back onto this road, straight down there is where I used to live, one of the places I used to live, and there was always a picture of the Beatles, because it's the famous barber shop, and there's quite a few barber shops in Penny Lane, you can probably tell why. But that was the original one, or it always claimed to be, and the picture's not there and stuff anymore. I'm not overly sure why. But yeah, that was the bank on the corner, the shelter in the middle of the roundabout, the line about the haircuts. This is all Penny Lane. I can't remember the other words. You can have a look around and guess. What are the other words? So, when I said they got the haircut there, I don't mean the famous mop top. That would come from their Hamburg phase, which was early 60s, well, before they were famous. It's just where it's said to be. I'm fairly sure it's right. That's where the Beatles had a haircut once upon a time. It is the Barbers as well, isn't it? Because if you saw the Paul McCartney carpool karaoke with James Corden, he goes there, doesn't he? I've just remembered that. But yeah, it's where they would go and get the haircut, but it's not where the mop top came from. Now this is all Penny Lane, the street, where people go and get their photos taken with the sign Penny Lane. It's right down the bottom of this street. I'm sure there's another sign, but there's a couple of Penny Lane street signs at the bottom. But about halfway down, I believe it's the white building, is where Freddie Mercury lived. Well, sorry, Freddie Mercury is said to have lived, but Freddie Mercury worked. And it's called, if I remember, Dovetail Towers, which is on Penny Lane. This is a video about the Beatles, not Queen, so you can forgive me for not knowing the dates of when Freddie Mercury lived here. Queen did play at the Cavern in Liverpool, and I believe they played it before they were big. And this is Dovetail Towers is here. Freddie Mercury definitely worked here, and it said he lived here when he was in Liverpool. It's a pub or bar, as depends where you're from, in Liverpool. Yeah, I'm not well up on my Queen knowledge of Queen in Liverpool. They are a London band. Freddie Mercury went to art college in Liverpool. He was a big fan of the Beatles, if I remember, so there's probably a reason he went to Liverpool other than be at art college. It's famous for its music, isn't it? Of course. I'm not too sure the story of Queen at the Cavern. I know they played quite a big gig there, which was important for the future of Queen, not really for them getting signed or anything, but if I remember, the band were not going through a good patch with each other, and I think they might have reformed in Liverpool. I'm not a big Queen mark or fan. Don't dislike them at all, but I don't claim to know lots about Queen. But yeah, that was my little bit about Queen. I'm running to the Penny Lane sign now, which is on the Magical Mystery Tour. This is where you'll get dropped off to have your picture taken, and there's normally always people having the picture taken with this sign. Do I drop down? Yeah, there you go. The famous Penny Lane sign gets replaced every year because it gets a lot of attention. But we are now down the bottom of Penny Lane, getting towards the park, which is Sefton Park in South Liverpool. So, running off Penny Lane now, we're heading towards Sefton Park, which is a famous park in Liverpool, in South Liverpool. Very beautiful place. We're heading towards Stu Sutcliffe's old house. I probably should have said at the start, I'm sure John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Freddie Mercury don't really need introducing, but Stu Sutcliffe was the original bass player in the Beatles. He was John Lennon's best friend. He was at art college with John Lennon. He wasn't the most talented of musicians, but he was a very talented artist. He was with the Beatles when they went to Hamburg, which was just before they quote-unquote made it. Obviously, Paul McCartney was on guitar, so you had John, George, Paul on guitar, and Stu Sutcliffe was on bass. The story goes, obviously, well, Paul McCartney is an extremely talented bass player, as everybody knows, and obviously the frustrations were growing with Stu not being very capable a bass player. But he was John Lennon's best friend, so he stayed in the band for probably only that reason. I was mentioning the haircuts earlier. The haircuts came from a female John Lennon met in Hamburg called Astrid Kircher. Sorry, my German pronunciations aren't good. But John Lennon fell for this Astrid, and so did Stu, which would lead to a big fight in Hamburg between the two. They somewhat made up, but Stu said he wasn't interested in being in the band. He wanted to stay in Hamburg with Astrid and continue being a painter. Some of his paintwork is available to see online. Obviously, he was a member of the Beatles, so obviously the paintings now go for a small fortune. But yeah, the Beatles returned. George was deported because he was too young to be there. They had forged his documents. They all returned home to Liverpool, and then a few months later, they came back. I think when George was old enough, which was only a couple of months down the road. They'd returned to Hamburg, and Stuart had a big brain hemorrhage, and he had passed away. And he, he passed away, and obviously another, even just in this short video, when not trying to talk death, I think I've mentioned 3 deaths that happened very early in John Lennon's life. I think it's arguable to say that John Lennon and Paul McCartney's bond did start, because there was a bit of an age difference between the two, and especially when you're a teenager, age is quite a big thing. I think they were bonded by the grief they both suffered. Paul McCartney's mother, who was a nurse, died of cancer when he was a kid as well. Anyway, this is all Sefton Park area, which, should I say a personal story? Should I? So Sefton Park is where I lived. This is all Sefton Park, the green space. When I moved to Liverpool, I had a very, very, very bad back injury. I could barely move. I was in so much pain, and I could never run around Sefton Park. I could barely walk. I was in phenomenal pain. I honestly can't stress how much pain I was in when I lived around here. So I used to see people run by, and my running days were well and truly over. I was told I wouldn't run again. I am quite a big guy. I was advised not to run ever again. I was told I probably wouldn't be able to run properly again anyway. So running around this park was never something I could do, so it was nice to finally be able to run around this park. This was about 5 years ago, I had this back injury. So yeah, that's my little personal story about this park. It's a really beautiful area of Liverpool. Liverpool is a very nice city. It's one of my favourite cities in England. So the story about my back is probably more prominent for this area, because this is very close to where I used to live. So I have lots of good memories of around here amongst all the pain. I really enjoyed living in Liverpool. If you do go to see the Beatles sites and stuff, you probably won't be in this area, because obviously Stu wasn't, of course he was a big part of the Beatles, but in the grand scheme of the Beatles he wasn't that big a part. And certainly the tours and stuff won't take you to around here to see Stu Sutcliffe's flat, because it's a little bit out the way, and it's not that big a deal, I guess. But Sefton Park is also where John Lennon's mum and dad met. So John and Julia, if I remember correctly, Fred and Julia, that makes more sense. Sefton Park's where they met. There's lots of events and festivals and stuff that happen in Sefton Park throughout the year. I do recommend going to around this area of Liverpool if you do go. You've got Lark Lane, which is just round the corner here, which is very near Stu. Stu's house is Lark Lane. It's a nice street of independent bars and restaurants, which is really nice, especially if it's summer. This is January at this point when I'm running. So if you're in the area and you're doing the Beatles sites, I do recommend going, have a little walk around Sefton Park and go to Lark Lane for some food. It's nice, very nice. But I'm just trying to kill time before I get to Stu's house. I believe, if I remember, I do stop the video when I get to Stu's, because there's nothing else to see. It's just me running back to the hotel after that. Also, if you do want to stay around here and see Stu's place as well, it's a good point, because it's a good point of reference because it's a hotel now. Stu's place. It was when you see the house, you'll think, God, he had a big house. He had an apartment. It was a little flat that his family had, and that's where he lived. But yeah, it's a hotel now. It's quite a nice hotel, and it's normally, Liverpool's quite an expensive city for hotels. I'm not overly sure why, but it's always pretty expensive. They have quite big football teams that bring fans from near and far. So that's probably a reason. The hotel's always pretty packed, so they can charge what they like. But it's I've stayed in it. It's a nice hotel. In the hotel, which is Stu Sutcliffe's house, right, is where I saw Germany beat Brazil in that semi-final when it was 7-1 or something. Another little personal note of that hotel. But I have lots of personal memories around here. I was always walking around here when I could barely move. This is all round where I used to live. I'm still trying to kill time until I get to the house. The video will stop abruptly when I get to his house. You'll probably be pleased to know. If you look out on the right, it'll be the famous boating lake in Sefton Park. If you see the water on the right, it's a famous boating lake. It's nice. It's all nice around here. I do enjoy this area of Liverpool. The hotel, the bar of the hotel where Stu Sutcliffe used to live, is called the Stuart Sutcliffe Bar. It has lots of pictures of Stu. It has a little bit of history of his history with the hotel. There's a famous story of John Lennon dropping off Stu at this address when they were both very drunk. The hotel is that building straight ahead of us, and that little sign's about room rates and stuff. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Sorry it's a little muddled. Stay safe, take care of yourself, bye.